Hey everybody, welcome back to the Senators Roundtable. I'm your host Jacob Billington, joined by Paul Quinney as usual, and today we're joined by special guest Shawn Simpson. Welcome back to the show, Shawn. How you doing?
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, good. Been a long time. I think it was last fall. So lots has happened in Sens land since we last spoke. So yeah, happy to be back. Yeah, back talking some hockey. And again, lots has changed since we last spoke. So excited to be on with you guys.
Yeah, it's a busy time in Ottawa. I mean, there's plenty of speculation to get into before the off season and kind of what kind of stuff Steve Staios is going to be doing because he's going to
Yeah.
have his hands full, especially with the mess Pierre Dorion left him. How you doing, Paul? We missed you last week.
Hey, great. I was out today and shot a decent round of golf. So how bad can it be?
Oh, exactly. Yeah. No, I here in Ottawa, man, oh man, that spring or summer has come early. And so getting lots of projects done. And I got to be honest with you, I usually look at kind of mid-June is when it hits in. And these last few weeks have been outstanding. So if you're able to get out on the course, which I'm sure a lot of people are right now, you consider it to be a good day, and especially on a Tuesday.
That's
Good.
right.
It's been pretty rainy here in Nova Scotia for the last few weeks, so
Oh, has it?
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, tough to get out, but I'm
Yeah.
sure we'll get there soon enough.
Well, for sure.
So the first question I want to ask you guys, and we'll start with you on this simmer,
Yeah.
whether it's the position of the player, whether it's the role of the player, what do you think Steve Staios needs to be looking for in free agency this year? I have a list of names
Uh,
that we're going to run through, but what
well,
position or role?
I looking for everything, but I guess we love to spin this talk. And realistically, when you look at the defenseman, you're looking for a partner for a guy like Chabot. What's realistic? Are they coming to Ottawa? And this isn't an anti-Ottawa or anti-Canadian thing. Just when you look at a guy like Pesce, I mean, there's going to be a ton of teams. Are you willing to pay that? Are there the fits? If I'm Ottawa, I'm being realistic. I need a number one goaltender. I need a partner for Chabot. Am I going to move Chychrun? I certainly need some help up front. I'm just not positive as to the free agents, and I'm always very careful with this. So I'll see guys and thought Matt Murray was a pretty good pickup. I thought Corpusalo, I thought some other things, but until guys get here and you see them play, I'm a little careful to react. But I'm sure they'd like to do lots of things. I just don't know how realistic it is when it comes to you go back historically with the Ottawa Senators guys. One of the best free agent signings they probably ever had was Clark MacArthur. Now, unfortunately, his contract extension he got hurt. If you can find a diamond in the rough, something that makes sense for both sides, then that's great. And we can spin and throw around all these different names. I just don't know how realistic it is, to be quite honest with you. But hey, that's why we're here. We'll talk about it a little bit. But my spidey senses feel like pretty more likely they're going to do things via trades, teams up against the salary cap, or maybe some moves when it comes draft time.
I agree. I think, I mean, looking historically, like you mentioned, Shawn, Clark MacArthur is definitely up there as one of the best, which he was pretty good while healthy, but that sets a pretty low bar. I would say the top two signings by Ottawa is Claude Giroux, which kind of have to
Yeah.
put an asterisk on because he wanted to come home,
Yeah, but
and
still
Sergei
give credit.
Gonchar.
But yeah, and going back to Gonch, I mean, I had him as a player in Washington. He was terrible early in that contract. It finished smoothly. Here's a guy that goes booing near the anthem. But as far as Claude Giroux, hey, lots of guys come home at the end of their career. They're terrible. You got to give credit there. But let's also not forget this isn't an Ottawa thing. I mean, my God, go through free agency around the National Hockey League and how many misses there are. That's where you see a Panarin is done well. You see Bobrovsky now doing well. Well, 4 years he didn't do well. So, like I said, it's not just an Ottawa thing, but you got to be so careful nowadays not to. Unfortunately, when you look at the Corpusalo situation, lock yourself into 5 years of what might not work. You look at the Edmonton Oilers with Jack Campbell. Fortunately, it's worked out with Skinner, but that's the danger of free agency: long-term deals, big money, and a lot of times it doesn't work out.
Well, you look back to the offseason of, well, I believe it was 2016 with the year of the kind of 6x6 deals passed out. You got Louis Eriksson, Milan Lucic. Like there were just so many bad deals signed that offseason, and
Yeah.
they don't always age.
No, no. I mean, and this goes back pre-salary cap. There's just a lot of them are guys at the end of their career. A lot of guys are handed money. You even look at JT Miller. That didn't look like it was going to go well, but Rick Tocchet's come in and turned that around. So, no, as I said, and then just realistically, amongst 32 teams, are players willing to come to your market? And again, not an Ottawa thing, but you're up against a lot when it comes to Canada, it comes to weather, comes to taxes, a lot of different things there. So, like I said, I don't know if you're Ottawa Senators, you're going and I'm not trying to be negative here, but for a long time, what Buffalo did was nothing more than driving up the price for other teams.
Yeah.
They're always getting the call. Even Mike Babcock, they get that call late. Oh man, I loved your offer, but I took the same offer from another team. So we'll see what happens come free agency.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, what do you think Ottawa should be looking at in free agency? Like Simmer said, it's hard to bring in the big guys, especially because it's a bidding war at that point. Like you look at guys like Jake Gensel, Ottawa's not going to land him. There's going to be plenty of teams that can outbid. Then Ottawa doesn't necessarily need that big fish winger. It sure would help, but that's not what they're really needing in this free agency class. What do you think, Paul? Who should they be targeting?
Yeah, I mean, I echo what Simmer and you were saying, Jacob. Ottawa is a tough town to bring a big name to, and like other Canadian franchises, it forces them, well, Canadian small market franchises, it forces them to focus on the draft, pick carefully, manage their prospects, and all things that and develop their prospects. All things I think that you can't really accuse the Ottawa Senators of having done, certainly not under the Pierre Dorion regime. But yeah, I mean, I think going through Staios, his mind, he's got constraints here. He's got a budget because once you sign Pinto, I would think he's got about $7 million left. That's it in free cap space. So you're not going out on a big shopping spree with that kind of money. It's just not a lot of money. And uh, so I think, he's going to emphasize. I mean, it's a right shot defenseman, a veteran presence in the forward lines. And I was going to say a goaltender, but on the free agency market, the pickings are so slim this year. There's virtually no one there. That was the same way it was last year.
Unless you want to
Uh,
bring Cam Talbot back. Just kidding.
yeah, yeah. But it's there just aren't any good goaltenders up for grabs. You could look at Ilya Samsonov in Toronto, but the Buds aren't going to let him go. No team's going to let a good goaltender go unless, of course, they found someone better. And I hear they're working on Linus Ullmark, but there's a lot in flux here, and against that backdrop. You can throw up all kinds of names, but that would be the framework that he's got to work with.
Yeah.
You,
And Simmer, we actually had a conversation 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, about does Ottawa really need a upgrade in net? And is that their biggest priority? And of course, bringing in Linus Olmark or whether it's going to be UC Saros or Jacob Markstrom or anybody else on the market, yeah, that'd be absolutely
Yeah.
fantastic. But where is the issue? Is it in the net or is it the defense in front of it? Or like, would you prioritize getting one of the big fish defensemen? So just a couple names: Chris
Yeah.
Tanev, Brett Pesce, Brady Shea. Would you target one of those guys, or would you
Well,
target a goaltender?
I'd certainly target it. I mean, look at Pesce, and again, just on the surface, playing in Carolina 9 years, American. Is he going to come to Ottawa? I don't know. Is he a great fit for Thomas Chabot, which you should have solved years ago instead of getting rid of DeMelo and putting Zaitsev in? It's been a disaster. You're not getting rid of the guy, so try to make it work. Chychrun would be an obvious to move along. What does that turn into? Well, yeah, I mean, an Ullmark to me would be an upgrade. People talk about, well, what's he going to be like? Well, his Buffalo numbers are awfully good. UC Saros makes a big difference. Internally, I don't know as far as their expectations, their thoughts on Corpusalo. He was terrible last year. A guy like Forsberg, I'm very comfortable as a backup, but I can't watch Corpusalo realistically. Okay, say is there better structure? Well, his time in LA was pretty good, but was not great in the playoffs. Do I think as of right now that they should end up upgrading in goal? Absolutely. Does better structure, better defense, do all these things kind of help it out? For sure. But from what we saw last year out of him, I'm not real excited. Now, what does Peters, the goaltender coach, think of him? Does he think this is a one-off and he's going to come back and be much better along with Forsberg? That's internal answers. And then realistically, okay, it'd be great if you brought in Ullmark, but who are you getting rid of? And are you going to go with Korpisalo and Ullmark? Do you want to end up having that cap hit? So there's lots of ways to go about this. On the surface, looking at it, to me, they need an upgrade in goal. But if you improve the defense, you improve the structure. We saw in Vancouver this year, although they have one of the best goaltenders in the National Hockey League. So those are internal questions to answer. I just got to say, from what I saw of Korpisalo last year in the Canadian market, I'm not real excited. He just didn't perform well. I mean, not being able to catch the puck can be a minor or a major issue. And to me, what I've saw out of Matt Murray and Korpisalo the last couple of years, it just hasn't been very good. But like I said, that's an internal debate. If they feel like going with those two and doing some other things with the coaching staff and other things as far as augmenting the roster, then okay. But I'll certainly be in wait and see mode. To me, the priority would be to get a goaltender.
But I don't, I don't think you're going to do that through free agency. But one way you could do it is deal Chychrun to the Boston Bruins. They need help on defense,
Yeah,
and Ullmark is apparently surplus to their needs. So
yeah.
the only downside, though, again, Simmer, you were talking about the drawbacks of the Canadian market is apparently he's got a 10 team no trade list, and I'd be willing to wager Ottawa's on it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to throw out, and I threw it out as a joke that he's from northern Sweden. He wants to come here. You dream of having an Ekholm situation where the wife is actually celebrating going from Nashville to Edmonton. So let's just put that out there. But yeah, I mean, he turned it down. Rumors has he turned down going to LA. So I'd love to know what his 10-team list is. And when you talk about the California and New York teams, it could be a tax situation as well. I mean, that's what people forget as far as the way these players look around. So that would be. And let's also be honest, guys. I think some of the things have been thrown out about Chychrun, a first round pick, some of the other things. Historically, goaltenders just don't go for much. I mean, this is an older goaltender. I think Schneider ended up being what, Bo Horvat, the 10th pick overall. But, back to the day, Kiprusoff, a second round pick. If we historically look at this, I think on the surface, a Chychrun for Ullmark would be a very fair deal, to be quite honest with you. And if Ottawa is able to find a right shot defenseman or someone to play the right side, would be a real good fit for both clubs.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because, I mean, we haven't seen a big goaltender traded like that in what, 10, 15 years now. It's been quite a while.
I threw that out, guys, and I was just trying to think of. I mean, Markstrom, obviously it was free agency, but you go back to the Patrick Waugh deals, and you go back to some of the. Well, you're going way, way back, but yeah, I was hard pressed to find anybody that really, again, and as I said, even in that market, tends to be a lot less than you'd expect when it becomes such an important position. I mean, a late first round pick, I guess, a possibility, but there's no way if I'm the Ottawa Senators, I'm trading Chychrun and a first round pick for Ullmark.
Not with 1 year left. No, not a chance.
No, no.
So we already kind of talked about Brett Pesce. It would be a luxury to have him in Ottawa. I think that he would be a perfect fit alongside Thomas Chabot. I got some other names I just want to get your opinions on.
Yeah.
Tyler Myers. That name has been going around a little bit.
Yeah.
I wrote a piece on it for the Hockey Writers and kind of thought about the idea of having 13 feet of Tyler on the third pair between him
Yeah.
and Tyler Clevin. I think that would be
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
But Simmer, what are your thoughts on Tyler Myers? Do you think he would fit in? I mean, now that Ottawa has Travis Green and Nolan Baumgartner, I mean, they're familiar with him.
Well, and that's where I'll go to. Tyler Myers is an extremely soft hockey player, and in the Canadian market, people get on him. I mean, he got booed out of Buffalo, was tough in Winnipeg. Now he's at the latter part of, are you comfortable just with a bigger man that's not going to be physical, but is he capable of playing in the third pairing? They've got the answers to that, and I'm all for it. I think he's passed through now where people don't have the expectations of the crazy contract. You're not going to get a physical guy, but let's be honest as well. I don't think the National Hockey League you need that right now. So on the surface, if you told me he's a third pairing defenseman, Nolan Baumgartner, who I drafted in Washington and respect, and as you said with Green, if they feel like he's a fit, and we'll talk about Tanev as well. Well, first of all, a couple of things. They know the fit. They know the player. I'm sure they're current on why he only played 13 minutes last year. And then the other part, this is going to take some recruiting. So it would seem on the surface, but nothing more than that. I don't expect him to come in and be a partner for Thomas Chabot. But like I said, you got a couple of guys here in Green and Baumgartner that can answer those questions for you. I just hope fans don't have expectations. Again, he's not a hard hockey player, but he doesn't need to be. And he could be a perfect fit for Cleveland. And let's also face facts. I'm just talking about length. He is a bigger guy. And there's no doubt that they have to get bigger on the back end, even if the guy's not overly physical.
Right. And I think physicality looks a little bit different to everybody. He's not throwing to big hits, but he can move bodies in front of the net, which is something Ottawa really lacks on that third pair.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there's a couple different levels of physicality, and the physicality that Tyler Myers brings is something that Ottawa needs on their defense. Just the going to push and shove you. He's not going to, again, lay those giant hits to change the momentum or anything.
Yeah. I'm not even sure how much pushing and shoving he does, but again, he's bigger and he's an upgrade. And I'm not really sold. I mean, Hamhuis is not Hamhuis. I'm blanking right now on the defense. Hamonic, I really can't play. I'm not sold on JBD as a full-time player. And hey, I give Brannstrom a lot of credit, but flat out, you just have to get bigger and better. So, like I said, that may be a nice fit as long as it's thought of for the third pairing with Clevin.
Yeah.
But Tyler Myers is Well, it's from Myers though, as he is reading in the Vancouver paper. I forget the name of it, drawing a blank on it, but he came right out and said, "I don't want to leave. I like it here." And
Yeah.
who can blame him? I mean, they're a cup
Yeah.
contender, so you're trying to convince him to go from a cup contender to a team that's, look, I hate to say it, still rebuilding.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it looks like he's going
And
to
let's
sign
also
a
face that you
three-year,
get a
three
lot of guys,
million.
and again, this isn't, but hey, you get into Vancouver, and this is the other part, guys, with free agency and why it's such a key. And I'll go back to the Edmonton Oilers in the 80s. The key is drafting single players that are young, come through your system. And I don't want to use the term they don't know any better, but when guys get into free agency, I mean, who's kidding? If you got a family and a wife and children and in school, who do you think has a say as to where you're going? And Vancouver's a gorgeous place. Guys settle there. He may be a player that lives in Vancouver the rest of his life. So there has to be, that's why free agency is so difficult. Like I said, your hope is you draft and develop, and they're proud, and they're the Brady Kachucks of the world. And like a lot of other teams in the National Hockey League, even Winnipeg, they're not looking around in the same way. But convincing free agents and their families to uproot for, as you said, a team that is very much touch and go to even make the playoffs, what would be the purpose of that unless you just blow them out of the water financially, or financially, not only in money, but certainly in the term that you're willing to give?
And you echo something there similar that Treliving said, Brad Treliving said when he was in Calgary, and he was admonishing the fans who have these wild expectations about who's coming to town. And he said, look, I'm not running a fantasy hockey pool here. I can't go to the player tree and pick a couple of plum choices. The
No.
NHL doesn't work that way. There's got to be two willing partners, and
Well,
that's the
and,
trick.
and you look at the Huberto situation. I thought at the time that was a pretty good recovery, and my God, that has literally been a complete gong show for both parties. That has been, a player that I don't obviously didn't want to be traded, and then you thought, boy, you dodged this with a year out and got him on a long-term contract, and it's just turned out to be a disaster. And I don't know how much of that is personal related, professionally. Basically, got the coach fired and didn't work out any better this year. So yeah, it's not easy, but that's for a lot of teams. I don't ever want to just use a Canadian angle to it. But again, finding the right fit on and off the ice, and you're very lucky in the case of Claude Giroux. But I'm not also looking past that. Hey, he's come in and played, beyond expectations. And when you give a guy 3 years, 18 million, that's not exactly a hometown discount as well. We can say that he wanted to come to Ottawa, but I don't think there was anybody else lining up given that contract, and been great for both parties so far.
Yeah, it has been great. I wonder if there's frustration building up with Claude Giroux, not to get too off topic with these free agent signings, but I wonder if there's frustration building that's 2 years wasted already.
Oh, there
Um,
has to be there. I
yeah,
mean, again, I don't even know about frustration, but hey, you've done as much as you possibly can. He may have even, again, I spoke to people around there. He called Florida. They didn't really want him back. They offered him a 1 year deal, not much money. Philly didn't want him. So he kind of looked around, and yeah, he has to be. His goal is to win a Stanley Cup, and he has played to the expectation and point the last couple of years where obviously he would have helped a team win a cup. So if he's not frustrated, then you're not a competitor, which we know he's one hell of a competitor.
it's going to be really tough because I think it's either extension or trade at this year's deadline, and it's going to be incredibly hard to trade him because you can't let him
Yeah.
walk as a free agent. You need to have him
No, no,
extended.
no, no, for sure, for sure. And and the other part that's going on, guys, with the organization is that they had a bunch of young players come through, and it was awesome. But when you start tracking back to Boucher 10th overall, DeBrincat 7th overall, Chychrun 12th overall, start to look at the system itself. Well, all of a sudden you're short forwards. There's nobody really in your system or in Belleville that's coming up to fill these roles. We can say whatever we about Claude Giroux. There is nobody. I repeat, nobody. Now the 7th pick overall, we'll see what ends up happening. But you're starting to thin out in a hurry here, and you have nothing to replace it with. So that's really starting to catch up with the organization. And right now, if you look at Claude Giroux, I don't care how he finished the season. The last couple of years, he is still very much part of the solution here in Ottawa. And getting rid of him, like I said, you got nobody to replace him.
100%. And yeah, outside of him and Batherson, right wing depth is not great right now. So they Steve Stais has a ton of work to do. Pierre Dorion dug
Yeah.
a big
Yeah.
hole before he left.
Very much so. Well, I mean, you really go back to, and I know it was all flash and dash. The whole DeBrincat thing was a disaster, and then shifting out and getting a late pick, Kubalik being 1 year and not doing anything for you. Now what are you picking? What, 26th overall? That's what you have to show for the 7th pick overall. Absolute disaster in a rebuild.
Yeah. It's miserable, and it really again dug this big hole. And again, you have to forfeit a first round pick. You have, and it all goes back to like,
that's a kick in the balls. That's what it is. Let's be honest.
yeah, and it just all of these
All the
silly
things that
trades.
happened, and then I broke that story when it first happened because I talked to Vegas and people thought it's no big deal. It's no, I'm like I gotta tell you, man, if this is what I'm being told it is, this is a big deal. I was just shocked it took that long to resurface, but man, you get into these trade calls and you start fibbing about what had actually gone on. Well, you're gonna have to pay the price, and obviously they did.
Yeah, and it all stems back to just these silly trades that Dorion made, like a second for Derek Stepan, trading a third because you didn't have a fourth for Travis Hamonic. Like it just they
Burrows
all
and
add up.
Murray. I mean, the
Yeah,
two picks he got for Dzingel, it ended up being Murray and Stepan, and it was just again the pro scout. If the pro scouting the last few years here had matched up with the amateur scouting, you're talking about a playoff team easily with how many mistakes they've made. But hey, let's focus on the future and keep it positive on this glorious day.
I got one more name for you in terms of free agency signings. We're sticking
Yeah.
to the defense today.
Okay.
Ilya Lyubushkin. He's had some interest in Canada for a couple of years, so I don't think
Yeah.
that's a huge deterrent for him. I know it is for some players,
Yeah.
but doesn't
Yeah.
seem to be. Do you think that Ilya Lyubushkin would be a good fit on this team?
Well, yeah, again, I'm just a little careful, guys, because I really liked when he played for the Leafs a couple of years ago when he came out of nowhere for, a next to nothing pick. These are the things of, and I won't go Mathot and Carlson, but I'll go Philip Kuba. One of the things, and I still think, first of all, with Thomas Chabot, I think he could be a better hockey player, but he's not going anywhere. He's making $10 million. So when you, and if I'll use this as a reverse, say Ottawa back in the day had lost Mathot in free agency. Well, they brought in Kuba. And when Kuba played with Carlson, he won a Stanley Cup. If Thomas Chabot is supposed to be the defenseman that we hope he can be, and that I still hope, well, you have no choice. You don't have to find the best partner in the world. I always use my famous Jeff Bukaboom story. He couldn't play in Edmonton. He comes in with Brian Leach. I mean, and not that this is a surprise, but we can talk that Bouchard's a good hockey player all we want. They don't make that Elkholm trade. People are complaining about all the defensive deficiencies he's had. You just have to. And if Lyubushkin is the guy, I don't mind him. But like I said, that's where your pro staff has to come and say, hey, is it DeMelo? Is it Lyubushkin? What is it? What can we bring in to complement Thomas Chabot? That ends up being that's the trick of the trade right there. And I don't mind him, but I'm very careful because I haven't watched him a ton. But I know 2 years ago in the playoffs, from a Leaf standpoint, I was like, wow, that's a pretty shrewd pickup. He was a big body, kept it simple, played pretty well. So if your staff thinks that might be a fit for Thomas Chabot, go for it.
So
Yeah,
Simmer,
go ahead,
go
Bob.
ahead. No, I'm just going to ask Simmer. So, do you think then you're talking about someone who can complement Chabot? What about
Yeah.
Dylan Mello?
Well, for sure, for sure. And again, and Dylan, first of all, this is so crazy how this happened. I wouldn't have pretended when he was first here that you're getting Scott Stevens or Rod Langway, but they had a fit, they had a comfort level. That Zaitsev thing was so ridiculous. Like I honestly go back and I remember even Pierre Maguire said, "Coach is coach and scout scout." This guy coming in and being forced. So you imagine trying to play with him? Like what a disaster. No hockey sense. And then all of a sudden the market and continuing to force and the great compliment, which was also complimented by some of one of the media members about him being an elite shutdown defenseman. I think other forwards scrambled to get on the ice when he was out there. I don't mean to make this personal, but that was an absolute disaster, when you look back on it. So what I also think with Dylan DeMelo, when you want to start being realistic, he loved Ottawa. Does that give you a chance? Is it perfect? In a perfect world, I know he played a ton of minutes. Do I see him as a top four defenseman? I'm not sure. But would that be realistic for Ottawa? Absolutely. When you look at it, okay, I'm not going to go crazy in free agency, but if Dylan was thinking, okay, I'd love to come back to Ottawa, you're going to slide him in with Thomas Chabot. I think that's a very realistic solution. And I think that's where fans have to get their head around on what you're actually bringing in. And at the same time, it's up to Thomas Chabot to step up and be able to find a compliment where it's not the greatest player in the world, but I'm a $10 million hockey player. I better make the other people around me better. And he better all of a sudden come into form here, which I hope he's able to do with a fresh start and with a guy like Nolan Baumgartner behind the bench.
Yeah, you both make a fantastic point. Ottawa doesn't need another top pair defenseman. They just need somebody that complements Thomas Chabot well and plays
We
really
don't have
well
the
with
dough
him.
to do it anyway. I mean,
Well,
Jesus. I
right.
mean,
It's not an
let's be
option.
honest. Like, Sanderson to Zub. I'm obviously a huge Zub fan, but when I'm paying guys $10 million, like I said, I shouldn't be finding another $8 and $9 million defenseman to compliment him. That's not the way the business works, whether you're a forward or a defenseman.
Yeah, and I think the hope with Chychrun was that he could play on the right side, which he did not. He could not. He couldn't play defense on
No,
the right side at all.
and people throw this around, and I'm not saying you have to, although it's becoming more and more difficult with the forecheck and the speed of the game. But the thing that was thrown out is, oh, they both said they'll try the right side. Yeah, well, good luck, man. Try handling the forecheck, keeping the puck in your own zone, relating to it. Like there was no evidence that it was ever going to work, and it really didn't. It ended up being again another one of those disasters, another one of those shiny trades. It was great because of the local ties, and the Chychrun family's awesome. But, and I'll also say this, I mean, he has not played up to expectations, whether he's playing the right or left side, talking about Chychrun at the same time.
Yeah. I do have I don't know if you know this, but I have a pretty interesting tidbit here. So
Okay.
each team has three slots on their right hand defense, assuming they're running 12 and 6.
Yeah.
So you would assume that there's on average 96 right-handed defensemen in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea how many right-handed defensemen played one game this season?
You know what? There aren't a lot of players around. I'll go 60.
81, which is
Okay,
even
but
still a
how
lot
many are
lower than I
playing full
thought.
time though? That's all. Hey, go through the Ottawa media and people say they want a big right-handed defenseman. Then go through the other 31 newspapers or whatever your coverage is. I want a big rangy center that can play. Okay, again, these are things that have been repeated, but whatever reason in my lifetime, it's really shifted the other way. The amount of left-handed hockey players is astronomical. Where as a kid, and I'm showing my age at 55, but the majority of our hockey team was right shots. So no, it's not easy to find, and to find a capable one that could play in your top four.
Yeah, and I will add that 54 played half the season, 41 games.
Okay,
So
okay, yeah,
54 right-handed defensemen played half
yeah.
the season.
That's less than two a team.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that was just the last tidbit I wanted to throw in there.
very solid, very solid.
I right now we're gonna do should he stay or should he go?
Okay,
And it can be rapid fire. If you want to throw in a comment, go ahead.
okay,
But all we need is a staying or going kind of
okay,
answer. And
okay,
again, feel free to elaborate. And I'm going to get both
okay.
your answers on these. Simmer, we'll just start with you. Kubalik.
Well, yeah, I mean, he should go. I mean, it didn't work. Now, having said that, he goes to the World Championships and plays well. I'd like to know on the surface what happened behind the scenes. Was he not used properly? Was he not comfortable? Was he unhappy being here? Now, all the only thing I'll say is he a top nine forward? Absolutely. Is he better than Ottawa has? Absolutely. But did I like what I saw last year? No. But I'm intrigued to know more behind the scenes. And like I said, he goes and plays at the World Championships like the Kubalik that we saw in Detroit.
Yeah, I think in terms of bringing him back, it's absolutely not. There's just it didn't work here once. Let's not
Yeah.
retry it.
Yeah.
Paul, do you concur?
I saw him buying a bus ticket the other day. He's gone. He's already left.
We don't even have a bus station, but I got it anyway. Let's go via rail.
All
Yeah.
right, Simmer, Parker Kelly, is he coming back or no?
Um, I don't even I'll say no, but to me he's a minor league player. So if he came back on a two-way contract, sure. Anything beyond that, no.
Paul, would you bring him back?
You know what? I'm going to say stay. He brings some much needed grit to a team that desperately needs it. So, in the absence of anything better, sure, stays.
I think he's a fine 13th forward. I don't think he's an everyday NHLer at this point. He showed some good signs under Jacques Martin, but I
Mm.
don't think he's full time NHL player.
Yeah, and I
Uh,
don't disagree. They need some. I love everything he does. I just wish he was a bigger player, could make an impact. And great part about being a 13th forward and a seventh defenseman is realistically you're good in the room, but you hope they never have to play you. So that's a bit of an out in my estimation. He's a great seventh defenseman. Well, I was a great third goaltender. I mean, who couldn't be?
that's good. That's good. You had a great juniors though. You did great
Oh,
in
exactly. I peaked at
junior.
18.
Yeah. Um, this one's a bit of a wild card that some people forget about, but Boris Katchouk. What do you think, Simmer?
I don't have any.
No thoughts. Yeah, it's
Those players are a dime a dozen. So, like I said, two-way contracts. If you want to have guys in Belleville, sure.
Paul.
Yeah, I'd give him another year. He looked pretty good on that line with Kelly and Kostelik. And, if you look at his output in those 21 games he played, if you extended that over an entire season, I think people would be happy. So give him another shot. Like you say, Simmer was saying, a two-way contract for the league minimum. What the heck?
Yeah, he's one of those guys. He just kind of put some energy into the lineup, but
Yeah.
you claim him on waivers. Most people are going to do that. Just have a burst and say, "I'm here to prove myself." But
No, you're playing for
um,
your hockey life. Yeah.
exactly. So we're going to get into some bigger names now. Erik Brannstrom. Do you keep him or do you send him away, or do you not qualify him?
Well, as of right now, he would be with Chychrun on the roster. He's my fifth best defenseman. So as it sits today, I'm keeping him. Now, how Clevin factors in, could he play the right side with Clevin? He's better than JBD in my estimation, although I didn't watch a ton of the end of the year. And as far as Hamonic, so as it sits as of today, I give this guy a lot of credit for being able to turn into a pretty good defensive player. So yeah, I'd bring him back.
Hey, Paul.
I'd see him go. He's another lefty, and he's just too small. He's getting thrown around out there. So
Yeah.
I'd move on from him.
Yeah,
I
don't
will.
disagree with any of that. The only thing I say too is that he is still better than what they have. But I agree. And the trade has been crazy, the way this went. And I also kind of wondering where they came up with the formula for his salary last year. Didn't
Yeah,
really make any sense as to why all of a sudden he was making that kind of dough.
yeah, didn't make sense to me. I will give him credit. We did our player grades probably a month ago now,
Yeah.
Simmer, and I gave him an A+ just because of the
Yeah.
expectations on the role that he was given. I
Oh
think that
man.
he turned into a fantastic kind of defensive option for that
Yeah.
third pair. Ottawa
Yeah.
just needs something different. I think that
Oh,
he
for
did
sure,
really
for
good in the
sure.
role. They
Yeah.
just need something different. So I think it's time to move on.
I thought when they made that trade they were getting Quinn Hughes, and that's not the case. I mean, that's realistically what you thought. And
Yeah.
I give the fella full marks, and man, does he works hard. And maybe just a fresh lease on life somewhere else. I'm not going to say offensively. But he's a guy that's at least established himself. He can play, and there's a lot of teams out there that are just looking for warm bodies at this point.
He needs to be a top four offensive option with power play time, and he's never going to have that in Ottawa. So
Yeah, well, if you're not having that in Ottawa, I don't know. You might be talking Switzerland.
well, that's fair. That's fair. But I mean, they loaded up the defense in front of them with
I know,
Chabot
but
and Chychrun and
let's be
Sanderson, and
honest with where
yeah,
Ottawa's at in the standings.
yeah,
Maybe Chicago, maybe one of these other teams. But yeah,
yeah.
as I said, and the other part with the power play guys, to be honest with you, he has to be he's an option in the zone. I mean, that's really his game. Unfortunately, he's not even a guy that, he transports the puck. Anytime he had the flashes in the past, it was always against bad teams and everyone would get all fired up.
Yeah.
Have a couple of rushes up the ice and then you realize who he's playing against. But yeah, good fella.
I do think, just last thought on Brannstrom, I do think that he's going to be the next Sean Dursey, get moved and break out and just
Oh,
actually
okay.
show his potential. That's just my prediction.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
I really
Well,
like
you
what he
wish him
does.
well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Jakob Chychrun, is he going to be back or no?
I would move him. Certainly I look at kind of the dollars, the solution, and I'm more than comfortable. Didn't see him play a ton, but hey, with the salary kicking in on Sanderson, you got Chabot, and I want to integrate Clevin for a lot of different reasons. And be honest with you, I'm not blaming him, but this has unfortunately turned out to be a little bit like Matt Duchene. For whatever reason, when they traded for him and then went on that trip that started in Chicago, it's been an utter gong show. Here's some rumors about maybe not a great fit. I know the family's outstanding, but sometimes things happen. So absolutely, he'd be a guy who'd be moving on, and not to mention the money and only a year left on his deal. And this is also where if you're proactive, realistically, a guy like that wants a contract extension. So you would think you could work that out with a hockey team and get some pretty good value for the player.
Paul?
I'd say stay for now. He's a valuable trade chip, but let's be clear, he doesn't want to be here. So
Yeah,
lock him
that's
in.
what it seemed like in the locker
Yeah.
cleanout.
Mhm.
Thomas Chabot, is he staying or going?
Well, he ain't going anywhere. And I'm only being realistic again. I don't know. I still think that there's something there, but at $10 million a year, what are you bringing back? What kind of a trade is there going to be? Like, would you be willing to go right now and trade Darnell Nurse for him? I mean, so
No
I'm
shot.
of I'm of the mindset that he's going to be back. Now, am I thrilled about it? Am I thrilled about the way he's evolved as a hockey player? Absolutely not. But this is also, and I go back to JT Miller, and I go back to other situations, guys. This is sometimes with your own assets is finding solutions versus them going somewhere else and taking off. So I don't think they have a choice, but I'm still going to say, hey, let's stay the course here. Try to basically start from scratch with him, less minutes, better defensive player, put on some muscle, start actually defending. And I went through this with Sergei Gonchar in Washington, where he was terrible. And Randy Carlisle came in and worked with him and turned into a real good all-around hockey player. So I still hold out that hope for Thomas Chabot.
Yeah. And I do think those bad years for Gonchar kind of people forget about his Washington years just because of he wasn't as primed as he was by the time he got to Pittsburgh, and
Yeah, he
did really
was
well
towards
there.
the end, but
He was, yeah,
absolutely not the whole time for sure.
yeah. Paul Thomas Chabot.
Stay. Hopefully, Green. You just pray. Hopefully, Green and his crew can turn him around. But
Yeah.
I agree with Simmer. You're stuck with him the way he is
Yeah.
now.
All right. For the sake of time, we're going to wrap things up now.
Okay.
We're running out of time here. So, Simmer, very grateful for you coming back on. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it and some good insight. Paul, happy to see you this week as always. And for everybody watching, thanks for tuning in. Leave your thoughts in the comments on kind of all your thoughts on all the players we talked about, and we'll see you next time.